Good afternoon and welcome back to Poe Discussions. Jeanie, how is it going this very warm, hot afternoon today?
That's pretty much the surface of the sun, so it's all great.
Yeah,
Wearing my sunscreen and staying inside.
yes, I think everybody is. And
Mhm.
so we have a very special guest today with us. His name is Roger McCormack. And Roger, welcome, and please just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you very much. So I'm the Director of Education at the Bronx Historical Society. We're a nonprofit organization. We've run the Edgar Allan Poe Cottage in Fordham in the Bronx since 1975,
Mhm.
and we're, stewards of his house. We do a lot of public programming, tours, and try to keep the macabre spirit of Poe alive in the Bronx.
Mhm.
Very cool.
And that the house was actually in another location prior to.
Yes. The house has been moved twice. It,
Okay.
it used to be right across the street, across Kingsbridge Road. It was
Hmm.
moved. It was moved a slight distance from its original location when they were widening the road around the turn of the 20th century. And
Okay.
the Bronx, when Poe lives there, Fordham is a small rural village. The impetus for his move there in 1846 is his young wife Virginia is dying of tuberculosis. So which is very hard to believe today, the clean country of Fordham, which today it's not clean certainly. Uh,
Yeah.
was the impetus for the move. So they're urbanizing Fordham in the 20th century, and two very important civic groups, the New York Shakespeare Society
Hmm.
and the Bronx Society of the Arts and Sciences, petitioned the city along with some famous names, Theodore Roosevelt and Rudyard Kipling,
Okay.
pushed to preserve it, and they create Poe Park in 1902, and they move the cottage as it's pictured behind you
Hmm.
uh, in 1913, and it's the oldest of all the Poe museums in the United States.
Okay.
In one of three of his houses that still stand. The
Hmm.
other, there's one in Philadelphia, one in Baltimore, and of course they have the museum in Richmond where Poe grew up.
Hmm.
But it's not one of his houses that he lived in.
Yes.
NYU famously, Poe lived in Manhattan as well, in the 1840s, and his boarding house in the West Village, NYU destroyed it on one of their breakneck expansions in the early 2002, I believe. The deal they did was that they'd have the Poe room for scholars and
Hmm.
aficionados and so on. So, but, Poe is when I go down to Baltimore and Richmond, it's always like, oh, not by the people in the museums, but by Poe fans down there. They're always kind of taken aback that he, has such a connection to New York and to the Northeast as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, and he wrote, I think, The Cask of Amontillado, Annabelle Lee here.
Yes,
I
that's
mean,
right.
I think, and whenever we talk to Poe fans, that those are two of the ones that are mentioned, besides the Raven and Telltale.
Yeah,
It's like those are the four that are always thrown out. And so to me, it's incredible what he wrote in this house, and that you do have some items in the house that actually belong to the family. Would you like to speak about those?
yeah. So we believe the original. I say
Okay.
I have to caveat a little bit, but so Poe, he lives he's, he's famous in his own time, but very poor throughout his life.
Hmm.
Very hard scrabble existence. He's an alcoholic, a bit of a bad boy. Um, and he lives in the house with Virginia and with Virginia's mother, his aunt, his mother-in-law, Mariah Clem, who keeps house. And she lives for another 20 or so years after Poe dies.
Hmm.
So and the house was, they were renting. They didn't have that much. But we believe that the rocking chair, some mirror on the wall in the parlor, and Virginia's bed, the bed frame, are original pieces.
Okay.
And yeah, so he does write, despite his misery, some of his best work there. The Cask of Amontillado is probably the most enduring tale from this period, inspired by his conflicts with rival, Thomas Dunn English. They went
Yes.
afoul of one another in the New York literary salons. And Poe, for a time, particularly after he writes The Raven in 1845, which
Mhm.
he also writes in New York. Unfortunately, not at the cottage, but in
Yeah.
the Brennan farmhouse in what is now the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which even then was farmland. Um, really great story, great tale of vengeance. And Montresor lures his rival Fortunato into the wine cellar and buries him alive for some unexplained insult. And very much influenced not just by Poe's own rivalries, but the temperance movement is at its heyday when Poe lives. And there's some scholars that see the Castle of Amontillado as a dark kind of temperance fable because it's a Fortunato's undoing is a drunken quest for
Right.
another bottle of wine, and also the Montresor family, the skulls and the bones and the catacombs, they're like intermingled with the casks, with the wine bottles. So it's
Yes.
kind of a subtle metaphor of the drinking and self-destruction
Yeah.
and death, which was very common then because for the first time there was kind of this awareness of the terrible consequences of heavy drinking. And I think there's a good book called The Alcoholic Republic.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I can't remember the exact dates he uses, but it's like the very early American Republic, like let's say like 1790 to about
Hmm.
like 1810 or 1820, and he just like enumerates how much people drank and was extraordinary. Anyway, that's one of the one of the great tales. A lot of the good, like lesser known revenge stories he also writes there. Hop Frog in the Cottage.
Hmm.
Hop Frog, where these court jesters take revenge on their captors, burn them to death, burn them alive. And very moving poetry as well. El Dorado, Ride Boldly Ride if you seek for El Dorado, which he wrote the first year of the California Gold Rush in
Hmm.
the 1840s. And now if I've forgotten the year it was, I think 1848, but not long before he died. So yeah, and it's his last home, the cottage. So it's a very kind of spooky, very interesting place.
It is. I remember I've been to all the houses, and I think it was the last one because this was my second trip up there here recently to the house. And I think it was the last one that I got to visit. And I was like, okay, last house, post last house that he lived in. And so it was really cool being able to go in and like both trips. The first time it was me and my husband, no one else was in there, but there were other people in there. So it was just like I felt like, you know, is Poe gonna speak to me or not?
Well, we have it's being renovated now, but there's a basement apartment where a caretaker lives
Yes, yes.
in the cottage. So there is a beating heart under the floorboards. And I recommend it. My friend Matthew Mercier, who was a former caretaker, he's written a new book, a novel called Poe and I, that
I've
is
read
really,
it.
really interesting. I haven't finished. I've read parts of it. I haven't finished it yet.
Okay.
But very, very interesting stories about the cottage and all the caretakers. That he was an exception. Tend to go a little wild. I don't, I don't know. I don't know if it's because of the cottage itself, if Virginia haunts the land, or if it's
Hmm.
the kind of people that Poe attracts that would be willing to live in his cellar. But
Oh,
I leave that to the paranormal experts.
exactly. Yeah, I did finish that book. I think it was last fall, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really good. He
He
did a great
writes he
job.
writes very well. I should have had it finished by now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, I know. If you're like me, I read several books at a time.
Yes,
I
definitely.
got to pass it to Jeannie to read because she hasn't gotten to read it yet. So, Jeannie, what questions do you have for Roger?
Well, you said that you stated earlier that Muddy lived 20 years or so after Poe died and they were renting the house. My question is the renters or the leaseors, not the leasees, the leaseors. How did they come about? I know you said that people petitioned to have the house saved or whatever, but how would the leaseors, did they sell it to the county? Did they sell it to
Uh,
someone? Or did they just say, hey, go ahead, take our house
that's
because Poe lived here?
a good question. So when Poe lived there, he rented it from family John Valentine, the Valentine family. They were landowners in the area.
Mhm.
And the house itself was built between the 1820, it's built in stages, as houses were in the 19th century. So it's built
Mhm.
between the 18, actually, we had a scholar recently do research on this and found out that some of the old information was incorrect. It was built between the 1820s and the 1830s by a man named John Berrien, who sold it to, goodness, Richard Farrington, who built the kitchen and we believe the small room, the sitting room at the end of the first floor. If you look behind Carmen, it would be closer to that small tree in the front of the house
Okay.
on the what side is that? The east side of the house,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah, that way.
So fast forward, so after Poe died, it reverted to tenant farmers, renters, and closer to the end of the 19th century, there was a dentist living there who was annoyed that people were coming to, and he had his practice out at the cottage, so people were coming there not to get their teeth cleaned, but to see where Poe lived. And then they entered into negotiations and sold it. It's owned by the city of New York. So the city purchased it, and in 1902 they dedicate Poe Park with the express purpose that this would be where they would move the cottage to.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was just curious about that because I know during that time, like you were talking, there was a lot of stuff going on in the early 1800s with the Second Great Awakening, then the Reformation period, then the Gold Rush, and all that other kind of stuff. So a lot of stuff was going out west due to Manifest Destiny, but a lot of stuff was also taking place in the north, especially around the industrial times and pre and well, antebellum South and all that wonderful stuff.
Mhm.
So with Poe not being well off and them having to rent and him trying to support them, uh, I was just curious why they would go to all that trouble to. And I understand that Poe basically started getting popular posthumously. It wasn't until after his death. So, and Theodore Roosevelt being the one that actually was the gung-ho president to start the national parks and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious that they would put that much energy into a lesser known Poe place, being the Bronx, but that being his last hurrah kind of thing.
Yes, I mean the historic significance is that he lived there and it's his last home where he read some of his best work. This is
Mhm.
also a time too. New York is not like other like cities like Boston, for example, where
Mhm.
they never really had um, like the urbanization that New York did in the 20th century. They didn't change the old city as much. So many historic buildings have been destroyed in New York. And there was a lot of, particularly with the Bronx Historical Society, there was a great movement, to not let this happen to Poe. And the civic groups that started it, were like the pioneers here in doing this. Um, but it comes out of too a crucible where a lot of historic houses in the Bronx had been destroyed when they
Mhm.
urbanized the area. And the feeling, I mean, I'm simplifying this, but the feeling was that not to let this happen again. I think it was
That makes
happily,
That's
happily it was successful. Like a good example is the old there's a famous Bronx County building. If you've ever seen
mhm.
the Bonfire of the Vanities or read the Bonfire of the Vanities, there's a lot of
Yeah.
Tom Wolfe has humorous descriptions of it in the 1980s. But the old Bronx borough, before it was even a county, it's the last county in New York State, when it was a borough. It was a beautiful building. They had the borough hall and Tremont, that was destroyed.
Mhm.
Also, Poe and the Poe might not have even have known, the term the Bronx. It wasn't until the later 19th century that it was called that. When he lived there, it was Fordham was part of Westchester,
Right.
Mhm.
and so the Bronx gets its name from Jonas Bronk, who was the first here. Oh, he would have known the name because he would have known the river. He would have walked along the Bronx River. But
Okay.
other than
Mhm.
that, the area was it was basically called Fordham where he lived.
Okay.
Now, seeing it's 50 years basically since the Historical Society, because you said it was 1975,
Oh
correct?
yeah. Oh, that's true. We should do something for that.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
it's the 50.
Look at this,
the-
all these dates. Well, I've forgotten it because we're gearing up for the 250 of the revolution. So that's
Oh yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
anyway. Go on. Sorry. Go on.
No, that's okay. I was just curious that is it still getting the same, I guess, kind of accolades that it needs to keep it going, or has it like since the internet has become so big and popular, has it the education part? Do you get a lot of people that are still
Oh,
wanting to come and look and support, or is it kind of falling off?
we have a tremendous amount of people every weekend. Parisians,
Mhm.
Parisian tourists almost every weekend, which is always very interesting to me.
It is.
Poe is very popular in France, um,
Mhm.
particularly with Charles Baudelaire, the great
Yes.
decadent poet,
Yeah.
was his great admirer, and he had similar political beliefs. He thought that democracy was a mistake, like Poe, and then
Mhm.
progress was like a false god. So on top of that, we do a lot of school groups. A lot of school groups in the Bronx come, and we do a lot of creative writing seminars, poetry seminars. We
Okay.
had an actor recently, David Nielsen, come and do a performance of Poe's stories that he had written at the cottage and his poetry. And I believe that even with changes in technology, I think there is still this real need, particularly not just for students, but I find that even with like artists, it's very inspirational to sit
Mhm.
there and to write and
Yeah.
also see where he lived. And Poe, is I can't remember who said it, but he was the most darkly fascinating creature in all of American literature. That
Yes.
Mhm.
the themes are so dark, and that he's really kind of no, he sits uneasily in the canon, the American canon, but
Mhm.
particularly when he's writing, it's the themes are very dark and he was appreciated to a degree in his time. The only person I can think of similarly that not so much the horror themes, but the darker theme, like Melville, who also really
Mhm.
didn't get, his. I mean, his early books sold well, but when Moby Dick came out, it was like, what the hell is this? He's
Yeah.
red. What is he talking about? It got bad reviews, and it was misspelled in his obituary. Anyway, so it's a
Yeah.
similar figure to Melville, kind of the
Yeah.
dark underbelly of the American Renaissance, that the period from the 1820s to the Civil War.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, uh, what other types, like, do you have any other kind of events that you do, like through the Poe House at Poe Park and things like that?
We do a lot of community events periodically. We have concerts. We had an opera singer perform Poe-inspired
Mhm.
operatic music from his porch,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and played his favorite song, "Come Rest in This Bosom."
Hmm.
A lot
Mhm.
of poetry readings. We also invite on a regular basis artists and writers to give book talks at the cottage.
Hmm.
That's very successful because it goes very well with the aesthetic of the cottage, and also it's a great opportunity for artists to kind of sell their books and kind of get their name out.
Hmm.
And also we just recently we updated some of our permanent exhibits. So we put up the Harry Clark art for the Castle of Amontillado,
Hmm.
which shows Fortunato chained to the wall. A print from the Broadway Journal we put up that was magazine paper that Poe owned near the end of his life,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and a photograph of H.P. Lovecraft, the great 20th century horror writer,
Hmm.
visiting the
Mhm.
cottage in 1922. And we have an upcoming exhibit on George Romero that will
Oh, nice.
Nice.
open on October 31st. Not
Perfect.
coincidentally, Halloween, not coincidentally. And George Romero is, great he made zombie movies, and
Hmm.
Hmm.
he was from the Bronx. He was from Parkchester, and so we kind of subdivided the exhibit. Half of it will be the more Bronx biographical part of the exhibit will be at our other museum, the Valentine Variant House, and uh, the Poe items will be obviously the Poe Cottage. And he wrote a number of screenplays, Poe inspired screenplays. And just give me one second because the name I keep forgetting the name of this movie.
Oh, that's okay.
And it's a Two Evil Eyes, which is a George Romero movie
Okay.
uh, based loosely on Poe's story, the facts in the case of M. Valdemar.
Yes. Okay.
Really interesting story, and it shows Poe's interest in the kind of the pseudoscience of the 19th century and mesmerism. And so this man, M. Valdemar, has been mesmerized and to try to keep him alive, and he comes out of it and putrefies, and is
Oh,
a loathsome mass or something. Is how Poe describes it. But it was very influential on body horror. So we do that's a big exhibit, but we also do like smaller exhibits on local Bronx writers and artists.
hmm.
We have one right up now. It's the artwork from Vincent Tirado's book, and they're a Bronx horror writer for young adults,
Okay.
uh, and also adults. And their latest novel is called "We Came to Welcome You," which is very good, like a nightmare of white suburbia. It's very similar and thematically to Jordan Peele, Get Out. You've seen that movie.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
The, infusing kind of like the Southern Gothic and
Oh, nice. Okay.
interesting themes.
Okay.
So we try to do it, we try to always have a Bronx connection and something literary, basically. So if you know anyone.
Hmm.
Okay. Absolutely. So, one of the questions we always ask is like all of our guests that come on, what is your favorite Poe story or poem or both? Because a lot of people there we've had some guests that don't really get into the post poetry. They just like short stories. And so,
Yeah. So unfortunately, there's a Harold Bloom, who's a famous literary critic, or he was. I think he's dead now.
okay.
Um, he really didn't care for Poe's poetry, and
Mhm.
it's sad because Harold Bloom grew up on the Grand Concourse, which is the street that the cottage is on. So it's
Oh, wow.
kind of et tu Brute moment.
Yes.
But it's a good question. I'll say Castle Amontillado to be cliched and to defend the cottage, obviously. But
Hmm.
I really like a story called The Man of the Crowd, which is set in
Hmm.
London, where
Mhm.
the unnamed narrator is following this old man over a course of a night who is depicted as wearing the imprint of the most horrible crime, and he's only comfortable in the crowd in the city. And it's a very elliptical, very much like a film noir almost, in
Ah,
very atmospheric prose. I like The Mask of the Red Death a lot. I like
mhm.
you see the influence of the diseases of his time and also of his wife's decline in death. And The Telltale Heart and The Black Cat, which I think are the great psychological stories where
Yes.
you really see his. I mean, it sounds basic, but there really is this ability to. And I always say with Poe, there's a reason the major stories are considered major because they really are his best in my view.
Yeah.
So the with the Telltale Heart and the Black, and the Telltale Heart is better, but you really get the sense of his ability to create these sick, sick and perverse narrators and
Yes.
to make them extremely believable.
Yes.
And for poetry, I like Israfil when he compares the angel from Islamic mythology
Hmm.
to the earthly poet. Very moving. And Annabelle Lee, I really like. It was many a year ago in Kingdom by the Sea, and very influential Annabelle Lee, which he writes in the college. The working title for Lolita was The Kingdom by the Sea,
Oh, I did not know that.
and
That's
I
interesting.
can't remember if it's in the book, but in the movie, James Mason reads Annabelle Lee.
Okay. I don't think I
Lolita.
knew that.
Um,
Okay.
So and there's like subtle hints in the I think the professor in the Lolita is a Poe scholar, and he's like there's like subtle hints that he's using Poe to justify going
Justify it.
after Lolita because Virginia of course is 13 and their
Right.
first cousins he's 26. Anyway,
Yeah.
the connection there. I also like Ullalum, which is a poem he writes at the cottage, which is set on a desolate fall day where the narrator
Mhm.
is following a star that takes him to his dead lover's grave. So it's
Mhm.
very moving. And Virginia, they're all buried together now in Baltimore,
Mhm.
Virginia, Mariah, and Anchor. But uh, because they were so poor, Virginia is initially buried in the Valentine family cemetery,
Mhm.
which is a few blocks east of the cottage. It's been destroyed. It's
Okay.
no longer there. But apparently Poe and like winter nights would lie beside her grave, even when it was snowing.
Hmm.
It's a very interesting story. So when they're urbanizing the Bronx, they're raising the cemetery. It's right east of where the Kingsbridge Armory is today, which is one of the largest armories in the world, sadly in disuse. Right next to the cottage on Kingsbridge Road.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so when they're destroying the cemetery, an early Poe biographer, William Gill, gets wind of this, um, goes to the sexton, digs up Virginia's bones, keeps them under his bed in his house for a number of years,
Mhm.
and eventually brings them south to Baltimore, where they're all buried together. And Poe's bones are moved from one end of the cemetery in Baltimore to the other. So there's all these theories as he's not really there, and
Right.
uh,
Yeah. He's
Well,
not all
and the,
there.
he's
yeah,
not all
and the
there. Yeah.
coffin broke open, and
Coffin
oh,
broke
I
open.
know all those things. Yeah, when the first time I ever heard about Virginia's bones, I was like, "This is a Poe story." I
I
mean,
don't know if it's true. I mean,
yeah, the
I
legend
can't
of it.
remember.
It's
I think
yeah,
it's. I don't know if it's true. Um,
yeah,
Yeah, we did an episode about it.
I think
yeah,
Nelson Poe's cousin, might have had her bones moved,
Mhm.
but the
yeah.
story about the
Keeping under the
it's a little.
bed.
It's almost too. It's too.
It's too Poesque.
It's too
Yes.
Poe's. Yes.
Yeah, I guess the romantic side of me is like, oh, that would be a really cool story if it was actually true,
Yes. It
you know.
was true.
Yeah.
It's true.
But yeah.
Mhm.
So, talking about Annabelle Lee, do you have a theory? Because, so many people say, it was Virginia that he wrote this about. Some people think it could have been Elmira Royster Shelton. It could be Sarah Helen Whitman, or it could be a like almost collab,
Yeah,
like
an amalgam of all of them.
all
I,
of them.
I hold out for Virginia. I believe he really loved her. His great quote when with tuberculosis, she would get sick and then get better again. And Poe
Mhm.
writes in a letter, I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity,
Hmm.
waiting for her to perish. And also at the end of his life, it could have been Annie Richmond, who he writes the poem For Annie in the Cottage, and the fever called living is conquered at last. Um, but in the also, I believe it was Virginia. At the end of his life, he dies 2 years after Virginia at 40. But he's essentially like almost grasping for money.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's very depressing to think of him like this. But there's a lot of heavy drinking, and it's hard to and there's some letter he writes to Mariah Clem where he basically says I don't really want to marry Elmira, but well, we need some cash here,
Right.
Mhm.
which is one of the theories that Amara Roos's brothers had killed him in Baltimore, but one of the least,
Hmm.
in my view, one of the least likely stories about
Yes.
his famous the enigma of his death. But yes, I would say Annabelle Lee, and the theory that it was Elmira Rooster is taken from the highborn kinsman, who is
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes interpreted that he met her brothers but I believe though it's too parochial a reading that it transcends.
Hmm.
I think if you read it, I think it's the particularly with post poetry, which is so romantic and almost
Yeah.
ethereal at times. just to say he was talking about her brothers, I think is to
Mm,
reduce it, to
I
really
agree. Yeah.
reduce the subject of it.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
And Poe also, there's a sense too. Um, he called the death of a beautiful woman the most poetical topic, whatever that means, the most poetical topic in the world.
Hmm.
But there is a sense that all his poetry is about loss and people dying, but not really
mhm.
being dead, and this kind of longing for reconnection. The Raven is the most famous example. He called the meaning of the raven, the mournful and never-ending remembrance for these people he had lost. Most famously, his mother, Eliza Poe, who dies also of tuberculosis when he's only 2 years old, um, and where and then he's taken in by the Allens, and John Allen doesn't really like him. He considers him
Mhm.
a spoiled brat, I guess. And people, you can still talk in this, if you can still talk in this manner today. Um,
Yeah.
and a stern, kind of authoritarian, interested
Yes,
in business and worldly, everything that Poe is not, in other words, so kind of oil and water
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
combination here. So
And it
Poe,
could
yeah,
also be.
there's a
Sorry,
sense
go ahead.
a sense of thwarted, connection, and I think in his life.
Hmm. Yeah, Jeannie, what were you going to say?
And I was just going to add that, John Allen probably had a touch of jealousy of Edgar because of his relationship to Frances and all that kind of stuff, and how she doted on him and all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
yeah, that's
Hmm.
true.
So,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
you get this. I sometimes get the sense, though. I'm not certain if this is true, but you get the sense that without, Francis, that they wouldn't have
yes,
they wouldn't have been adopting. They wouldn't have been
they wouldn't
adopting
even taken
children.
him in.
I think
Yeah.
right.
that makes sense. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, so there's certain jealousy, and I think that's often true of people that come up
Hmm.
from poverty and
Hmm.
are very critical of
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
considered with the softness they see in the following generation.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, and
But
also in that,
the baby boomers combine the maximum of entitlement and then criticism of the next generation.
well, and you also have to understand that John Allen's status during that time put him above where Edgar was coming from, because his mother was just a lowly actress, and that was
Yeah,
not seen as, that was seen just a little bit higher than living on the street in those
yeah.
days and times.
It was considered very low class. That's right.
Hmm. So he probably didn't appreciate that Francis was bringing basically a waif, an
Yes,
orphan who was no better than, trash on the street.
yes,
Yeah.
And that's why he was such an adamant against him, of never adopting him, never actually bringing him in as a son. So yeah, I mean, it is amazing that he was able to stay with him, but I think if Francis had died a lot earlier,
yes.
then John would have kicked, Edgar to the curb a lot quicker.
I always say though that Poe, had he been given the fortune and everything from Allen,
Mhm.
Hmm.
uh, he viewed himself at first as solely a romantic poet, as a kind of American Byron,
Hmm.
and he writes at a time, the penny press
Yeah.
comes into
Mhm.
existence in Poe's time. The
Hmm.
really kind of lurid sensationalism of American literature in the 19th century,
Mhm.
which I mean, it existed in England and other places in the world, but in America, it really has this like grotesque quality.
Ah,
And Poe responds to that in the culture. And so he is a genius, a very original writer, but at the same time, he's also responding to these kind of currents in the popular culture, which is very interesting, particularly in how people view him
Mhm.
today. So really, the John Allen cutting him off, I mean, it was bad for him, but I think he suffered, but the
Good
art,
for us.
the art
Yeah.
was improved, I think, which is
yeah.
a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, I know. Yeah, because if he had been adopted and inherited all of that, what would he have done with it? Would he have written the things he wrote? And he might even be a different Poe than we know today.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Oh,
I was going to say something else about John Allen. I can't remember what it was.
well, if you think of it, just say it.
Oh, and
I
and
have
and,
others.
and John Allen too. There's this, he was wealthy, but there was also a period where I'm reading the Richard Copley biography, and I didn't know that
Mhm.
he'd been, heavily in debt. And it was like
Mhm.
basically like almost, I think at one point almost ended up or did end up in debtor's prison, and then was able to rebound when the economy came back. Um, so John Allen too. There's this sense I think of entitlement, but also the sense of being very wary to kind of support this person that and he recognizes in Poe, I think. So I always say it's like half John Allen and half of Poe's own doing,
Yeah.
particularly like the drinking and
Mhm.
gambling famously at the University of Virginia. I
Mm-hmm.
think the equivalent today is almost it's a lot of money. I can't remember what it's equivalent to, like sixty
It,
thousand dollars or
yeah,
something.
it was a lot.
Yeah,
It's a
Yeah.
lot of
When you
money.
yeah,
think
it was
about
sixty
it.
thousand, I
Yeah.
think. Um, but then you also have to think on the other side of that, if John Allen had provided him with enough money to survive while he was at the university,
Yeah, that's true.
would he had to have gambled at all? So
That's
That's true.
true. Yeah. Or would he have been successful and finished his degree and
Mhm.
gone on to do something else?
Yeah, it's all those questions that Poe keeps raising.
I know. So, one other question we always like to ask is, so how did you find Poe, or how did Poe enter your life? Like, it's very interesting to see because some people it happens like in elementary, some we've talked to, they found it on their own. It's fascinating.
So I found a cottage on Indeed.com.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
I'm sorry, such a
That's
bad
all right.
joke. I'm very fortunate, particularly when I when I have to deal with some of the school groups who are who is Poe, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think unfortunately he's been I don't know if he's purged. I think from some of the curriculum, depending on where the schools are.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But I can't remember if it was eighth or ninth grade. They had us read The Pit and the Pendulum, which
Okay.
which is
Mhm.
another one of my favorite of his stories. It was very claustrophobic, extremely. I remember being very terrified, particularly of the rats and the
Oh, yeah.
of course
Mhm.
the blade getting closer and closer to the guy before he's rescued in the end
Hmm.
from the Inquisition. Um, Strangely unusual in a post story too, where there's like a real historical setting.
Hmm.
Usually it's a bit, not always, but they're usually it's left to the reader to interpret
Hmm.
Mhm.
when it's happening. Um, so that I thought was a great story, and then I read the Cask, and I thought that was a really sick, perverse
Yeah.
revenge story where there's really no he, Poe is like Patricia Highsmith. If you ever read The Talented Mr. Ripley
Hmm.
about
Mhm.
con man Tom Ripley, the con man who is sent to Italy by mistake almost to retrieve this ne'er-do-well playboy Dickie Greenleaf.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then he kills him and forges his will and gets all his money. But when you're reading it, you like sympathize with him almost because he's like the underdog. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Poe
Mhm.
also has this, not in all his stories, but in the Castle Amontillado, this kind of gift of kind of really kind of imbuing these narrators. They're perverse, but they also it's kind of like almost like a glee in the crimes that you kind of sympathize with. Um, so that was the introduction. But I have to admit, I knew nothing about his biography until I got the job here, and
Okay.
I thought, but when I started to read about this, I was like, oh my God, his life is as interesting as some of his
Mm.
stories.
It is.
And
Yes.
I'm very drawn to kind of the um, I don't know. There's a real sense. I mean, there's a sense of tragedy because he dies young, but there's also a sense, and I was drawn to this. There really is this. It's like a heroic quality in him as well. He's
Mhm.
really prodigious. He writes a tremendous amount
Yeah.
under really adverse circumstances, and so if that doesn't sound too trite, I was drawn to that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what draws us, trust us.
Yeah, here in Tennessee, I actually teach freshman English, and it Poe has changed a little bit. It used to be like Telltale Heart was in eighth grade. I believe it still is.
Yes.
Ninth grade, Annabelle Lee is the only thing, and I add a little bit more poetry into it.
Okay.
And then 10th grade, they do Fall of the House of Usher. And then junior year, I can't remember, but I think seventh grade's The Raven. And so it used
Okay.
to be like when I taught sophomores several years ago, we had Fall of the House of Usher, we had Mask of the Red Death, and some poetry. And so it's lesser than what we had, or fewer than what we had, but it's still like in Tennessee, he's still in our standards,
That's
which
good.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy about. I would be very disappointed not to get to teach Poe.
Yeah, that's very good. The great difficulty I have with the students is it seems to me, and people don't really read. I don't know, it's probably always been true to a degree, but it's probably due to the tech changes in technology. But anyway,
Hmm.
Yeah.
it's more of a difficulty for sure.
Absolutely. I know what I find interesting with my freshman students, a lot of them, when we're doing a novel, they will find it a free copy because a lot of them are read, on YouTube and things, not just necessarily Poe, but other ones. And they like to listen to it so because they can do other things while they're listening to it.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
so I think we're moving into a society of people are still reading, and I think those of us who are older definitely prefer the book. But I think the younger generation, they do a little bit of both, just depending on if they like to read. If they don't like to read, they are not going to read.
I have to get down to
Well,
Tennessee. I've always wanted to go to the Hermitage.
Oh, yes.
that's at the
Um,
Hermitage,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's
and
great.
Poe writes it in the 19th century. Was famous to set up Andrew Jackson that he went to the White House on a horse and left on a train. But
Hmm.
Poe was not very, Poe wasn't very political, but he didn't care for Jackson. Thought that he was a Democrat.
No, and wrote King Pest.
King Test, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
and at the cottage, he writes another story called Milanta Tata, which is very
yes.
influential on science fiction. It's a time traveling story.
Hmm.
The year is 2800, and the narrator, a woman, is traveling back in time to the 19th century. And Poe uses it as a vehicle to kind of trash the beliefs of the time. Democracy as a government for dogs, and why would you let people, very biting, kind of acerbic social criticism, and a real like insight into Poe's what Poe was thinking. And he was very elitist. Despite his lifelong poverty, always kind of identifies as
Yeah.
the genteel kind of aristocrat.
Hmm. Absolutely. Jeannie,
Mm.
what else? What other questions do you have? Can you think of anything?
No, I think it's all
Oh, and
things I can
if
think
we
of.
have a second,
Oh, yeah, we've got plenty of
if
time.
you look
Yes.
at the house behind Carmen, you'll
Hmm.
see we have a new cedar shingle roof here,
Okay.
which
Hmm.
will turn, it looks a little stupid now because it should be gray, but it will turn gray with time. Um, and the design of the house it was a Dutch clapboard farmhouse. So you see
Hmm.
with the slope roof, it's very characteristic of the Dutch houses. And
Hmm.
also those little windows on it's 1.5 stories. Those little windows
Hmm.
up there are called eyebrow windows.
Okay.
It's a
Hmm.
later Dutch design where like the old Dutch houses don't have windows on the second story. And
Hmm.
this was like a fusion of English and Dutch designs in a very kind of polyglot, and this year is so 1625 New Amsterdam was founded. So this year is 400 years
Hmm.
of New York City. And the cottage is a remnant of our Dutch heritage.
Nice. Okay. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Interesting architecture.
Yes. So I know like Matthew Mercier's book, he writes, with there's some supernatural with Poe's ghost and things like that. I don't want to give too much away, but have you had people say they have seen any ghosts. I was just kind of curious because with all the houses, old houses like this, especially with a horror, predominantly horror writer, people are going to say they see things, hear things, that kind of thing. Have you had any spooky stories that anybody has told?
I was once in there at night locking up, and I thought I heard something, but I had a few cognac, so it's not. It can't be objective.
Yeah.
Um, we had um, in a moment of poor judgment on my part. There's a museum in Manhattan called to kind of give you to set the story up. There's a
Okay.
museum in Manhattan called the Merchant's House Museum. I
Okay.
can't remember the name of the merchant, but it's a 19th century house that somehow wasn't destroyed in Manhattan, and it's reputed to be the most haunted house in Manhattan. So
Okay.
they do a lot of like ghost tours and things in
Yeah.
in this vein. Um, and so the director put me in touch with a person that does it. And so we had a paranormal investigation a few years, I think in 2024, on
Okay.
Virginia's death date, which is January 30th.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I mean, I have to say I'm a bit skeptical. I don't I don't really I don't really I don't really believe in that sort of thing. So I've never seen
Yeah.
it. Like I'm like Han
Mhm.
Solo. I've never seen anything to make me believe in the Force or whatever.
Right. Right.
That's like that great line. It's like the
You
the
never know.
great skeptical line. But yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
And
you never know. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to think about, just
yeah,
that kind of
definitely.
stuff. And so,
Well, particularly Virginia, she dies, unnaturally, and well, I mean, it's natural, but dies very young.
yeah,
It dies in a
Mhm.
terrible way. I mean, they call it consumption because you would essentially waste away, and
yeah,
you're
Mhm.
hemorrhaging blood from your lungs. It's
I know. It's all,
not a good way to die.
I know it.
No.
Oh, so Roger, what do you guys have coming up? You said there's the Romero,
Marrow exhibit.
starting on
We'll,
Halloween.
we'll have some readings soon. We're open every weekend. We'll have hopefully when it gets cooler because it's we need to get a air conditioner in there. Um,
Mhm.
very hot, and so really in the fall we'll pick up more with events.
Okay.
That's good.
It's the wood loves to trap the heat.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It was
Yes.
warm the day that we went in there because the first time I went, I think it was in March. And so it was nice and cool
Yes.
and yeah. And
By
so
the end, sometimes when I do the tours on the weekend, sometimes if it's really hot, like near the end of the day, because you have to stay there. It's like 6 hours. You can't go
Mhm.
yeah.
by the end of the day. I think I see Virginia walking around.
So
I do
hallucination is really
hallucinate
good for the mirage.
Yes.
like Madeline Usher,
Exactly.
come out of the tomb.
Oh, now,
But
yeah. Are you guys
it's bad though. It's bad though for it's the heat's not good for the artifacts.
No.
The
exactly?
wood too,
Yeah.
it's, it's not ideal. So we're working on that. That's the next project is making sure as the temperature is controlled.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Really good. So, are you guys going to have a booth at the Poe Fest in Baltimore this year?
So I'll be there. I'll be there one of the days for sure. I'm not sure
Okay.
yet, but
Okay,
we'll have
great.
a booth.
We will have a booth as well, and so you'll
Oh,
definitely
great.
stop by. Normally, we're usually situated right in front of the house in that little short row of booths.
Oh yeah, that's where I was. That's where I am as
Okay.
well, usually.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if Enrico will change it, but that's usually where I am.
Yeah, the past few years, she hasn't changed ours. We might be in a
Um,
different, place within that. But I think for the past 2 years, we've been right next to the Poe Museum from
okay,
Virginia.
good. Yeah, I'll definitely do it. Probably on Sunday I'll do it. Um,
Okay.
and I'll probably do it Saturday as well. Maybe not for the full time though. It's really impressive what she's done. She's really Enrica. She's really grown
Yes,
really made it really successful. It's only 2 months away, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's unbelievable.
I
Summer's
know it.
almost over.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, I start back to school on Friday. And
Oh, wow. That's really early, isn't it?
yeah, I go back, like it's one of our teacher days, and so students don't have their first full day till the
Oh, okay.
following Friday. And so yeah, we always start way before, we start around the 1st of August and we're done by the end of May. So
Oh, okay. Is that because there's farmers or they need help or
I think it kind of used to be that way, but
Mhm.
it's just because it's so traditional, they don't want to change
yeah,
anything.
okay, I see.
Yeah.
Where in Tennessee are you based?
Right out of Nashville.
Oh, right at Nashville. Okay, very
Yes.
good.
Yeah, right out of Nashville. So, all right.
There's a
Oh,
good, do you know the New York connection with Tennessee?
Jean,
Not, or a New Yorker,
trying to
not a
think.
New York State connection.
Off the top of my head, I don't think I do.
Aaron Burr and Andrew Jackson were very good friends, and Aaron Burr helped Tennessee become a state, and Jackson is
Mhm.
involved.
Ah,
Peripheral, Jackson's involved kind of at the periphery of the famous Burr conspiracy, which no one really knows what his real intentions were, but
mhm.
basically to conquer the Southwest and make himself an
Mhm.
emperor there. So it's a very interesting, and
Yeah.
fictionalized very well in Gore Vidal's novel Burr, which has a very good portrait of Jackson too.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, if you have any interest in that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Jeannie is a retired
Mhm.
teacher, and like, I've taught English and
Yeah.
history. She's taught all four of the, like, math, English, science, and social studies. So
oh, okay, great,
she's
wonderful.
Yeah.
definitely, I love history, but she's more of a history buff than I am.
Okay, I see.
So
Gotcha.
yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
find all that stuff very fascinating.
Yeah. It just the corrupt bargain was one of the things I had to teach in my time. So
Oh yeah, it
that's
was
one of the
Henry Clay, right?
yes.
Yes,
Yeah, it was the John Quincy Adams actually became the
yes, the
president
Senate
because he promised the Secretary of State to Henry, not Henry, yeah, it was Henry Clay.
Clay.
Hmm.
Yeah, and Andrew Jackson lost out to it, and that's when he
Yes,
was
yes,
so so the corrupt bargain in 1824 and all that wonderful stuff, and then the whole thing with Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr when he actually had just as many electoral votes as
yes. That's
Thomas
right.
Jefferson because Thomas didn't have a chance to go out and uh, politic basically for
Yes.
himself, so he sent Aaron, and then Aaron and Alexander Hamilton really hated each other. So.
And Burr invents almost like modern
Mhm.
campaigning, like that, which was at that time
Yes.
it was seen as like ungentlemanly, and not what not what the squires did. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And mudslinging, I think, was started with Aaron Burr. So,
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well,
oh, yeah.
the Jackson, some of the Jacksonian rhetoric I find like
Well,
really,
political cartoons were
yeah.
started
Oh,
because of Andrew Jackson, and
Jackson today I find very interesting parallels.
mhm. Yes, and I think that might have been one of the reasons Poe had, he was I love Poe, but I can, you were talking about him being elitist, and I agree. He was very much the snob and was raised in that era. And I
Yeah,
think one of his problems might have been with Jackson being he was uneducated. He
yeah,
was illiterate and, all that kind of stuff. So he didn't have the schooling. And so
like Poe
I
did.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that might have been one of his problems with Jackson, not to mention the whole political part. So I agree with
yeah,
that. But yeah, so there is so much history that, Poe's connected to that many people don't realize because we always forget that, yes, he only lived to 1849, but there was a whole plethora of stuff going on during
Yes.
oh,
his lifetime. So,
the historian called Daniel Walker Howard, The Transformation of America.
mhm. Yep. So,
Absolutely.
but no, thank you for joining us. It's
Oh no,
been
thank you for
wonderful.
having me. I hope it was interesting.
Yeah,
It was.
it was very interesting. And
Yeah. And so
so,
we hope anyone, especially any students or anyone even interested in Poe, checks out to find out that, hey, New York can lay claim to Poe just as well as Baltimore and Richmond and all Philadelphia and all the other places. So,
Yes, absolutely. We're the best, though. Don't forget.
That's right.
Oh,
Because they saved the best for last, so
Yeah.
he was the
there you
last
go.
there.
There you go.
Not if you keep showing the cottage though, with all those weeds in front of it. I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed.
It's authentic, it's okay.
Yes, it's
Right.
authentic.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
That's right. Well, I guess on that note,
We are
our
Poe out.